Hey guys, bit of a content warning up top. This video is going to deal with suicide. If that is too much for you, I recommend that you give it a skip. Or you can skip to the timestamp that's on the screen right now, at which point I will be talking about more positive things. So, in the past month, I've heard from many of you who have asked if I can make a video about a recent study in Nature concerning trans care and suicide. And I read the study and it is interesting, but I went back and forth over whether to actually make a video about it. Obviously, you're watching this right now, so you know that I did decide to go for it. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the study, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about what made me waffle about discussing it. So it's called State-Level Anti-Transgender Laws Increase Past Year Suicide Attempts Among Transgender and Non-Binary Young People in the USA. And it was published just last month in Nature. As with every video I produce, links to everything I talk about can be found in the transcript, which is available at skepchick.org or at patreon.com/Rebecca. The direct link is in the description box below. Unfortunately, though, that paper is not available to the average person without institutional access. Fortunately, the paper is based upon data collected by the Trevor Project, who has provided the results of their annual surveys over on their website with a lot of different ways to view that data. If you're not aware, the Trevor Project was formed in 1998 because some filmmakers made a short dramedy called Trevor about a 13-year-old boy who's rejected by his peers after he comes out as gay, and so he attempts suicide. The filmmakers wanted to end their movie with a shout out to a resource to help young people who were facing the same problems as Trevor. But there wasn't any, so they made their own by creating a 24-hour LGBTQ plus suicide prevention helpline called the Trevor Lifeline. And over the next few decades, they grew into this huge organization that is now employing researchers. They've been putting out reports on their findings for the past few years, and several of those have been published in peer-reviewed journals like this latest one. In line with Trevor Project's whole mission, this new study is about trans youth and suicide. Across their annual surveys, the Trevor Project polled more than 35,000 transgender and non-binary youths between the ages of 13 and 24, asking them questions about whether they had attempted suicide in the past year, whether they had considered suicide in the past year, and if so, how seriously they considered it. They then compared the responses between states that had introduced anti-trans laws that targeted kids, like restricting their medical care or banning them from playing sports, with states that did not have those laws. They found that in the first year after a state introduced anti-trans laws, the number of teens between 13 and 17 attempting suicide jumped significantly compared to other states. In the second year after the introduction of the law, the number of suicide attempts significantly increased for all respondents up to the age of 24. The increase was anywhere from 7 to 72%, depending on the time period and the age of the participants. That would be damning enough, but the researchers took things a step further by demonstrating not just a correlation between anti-trans laws and suicidality, but direct causality. Often causality can be demonstrated in studies by doing things like a randomized controlled trial, but you can't just randomly assign trans kids to live in various states. So in this case, the researchers controlled for aspects like suicide rates in the years prior to the introduction of these laws, federal policies, and each state's suicide prevention efforts. The results were so clear that one co-author told NBC News, state-level anti-transgender laws caused, so not associated with, not linked to, we can say very confidently, they caused up to a 72% increase in number of past year suicide attempts among trans and non-binary young people, as well as a 49% increase in the percent of trans and non-binary young people who made at least one attempt in the past year. Despite that confidence, there were some limitations to the study. They were comparing surveys between individuals instead of following subjects over those years and seeing how they change. They also didn't consider the different effects different laws might have. For instance, it's possible that fully banning puberty blockers may have more negative effects than setting up roadblocks to accessing them or preventing kids from using their correct gender's bathroom. But as more and more states consider these anti-trans laws, it is important to know the inevitable damage that they will be doing, just as it's important to to know that enacting anti-abortion measures leads to more women, fetuses, and babies dying. So why did I hesitate to make this video? Well, for the same reason I hesitate whenever I make a video about the inevitable damage of abortion restrictions, because the people who want these laws do not see this result as a negative. When it comes to lawmakers enacting legislation on abortion, their goal is not to save babies. It's to control and punish women and get a bunch of money from the Christian fundamentalist lobby while they're at it. When it comes to preventing trans and non-binary kids from accessing gender-affirming care, the goal is not to protect kids. It's to control and punish kids who challenge heteronormativity. Imagine a transphobe has a little 3-year-old boy who asks for a Barbie for Christmas. The transphobe spanks him and says she's going to get him a toy gun, and if she ever catches her son playing with dolls in the future, he'll get another spanking. A child psychologist tells her, hey, you're really going to fuck up your son. His mental health is going to be damaged now and in the future. The transphobe will reply, good, because I'd rather have a fucked up son who conforms than a well-adjusted kid who makes the neighbors look at me funny and wonder what's wrong with my family. We want to be normal, not happy. There's so much psychological research out there showing how humans strive to conform that we'd be here all month if I were to cite it all. But the classic experiment is the Asch paradigm. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch at Swarthmore conducted a series of experiments in which he used peer pressure to get people to answer obvious questions wrong just so that they would fit in. Decades of research since have built upon that, showing that people will choose to fit in even if it means giving up on rewards, like saying they prefer a song they don't actually like and therefore not getting a free album with the song that they do like, just to fit in. We're social animals, and, that's just the way our brains are wired. If pressed on the issue, very few parents would say that they would rather their child be dead than non-conforming. But I'm sure that they will lie to themselves that the child will be happier once they realize the benefits of fitting in. With that in mind, I am making this video in the hope of, the legislature isn't going to care. The people who don't have any direct experience with trans or non-binary children won't care. But I do hope that the family, the friends, the teachers, the carers of non-conforming kids, I think that they'll care. And I think they need to know that by rejecting those kids or punishing them to try to get them to fit in, they're not helping them. They're actually increasing the chances that that child will die. And with that in mind, I'm going to end on a positive note. Here are some findings from the 2024 Trevor Project survey that I think are applicable. First, LGBTQ youth who felt high social support from their family reported attempting suicide at less than half the rate of those who felt low or moderate social support. LGBTQ plus young people who reported living in very accepting communities attempted suicide at less than half the rate of those who reported living in very unaccepting communities. LGBTQ plus young people who had access to LGBTQ plus affirming spaces and transgender and non-binary youth who had access to gender affirming spaces reported lower rates of attempting suicide compared to those who did not. Transgender and non-binary young people who had access to gender-affirming clothing, gender-neutral bathrooms at school, and had their pronouns respected by the people they live with had lower rates of attempting suicide compared to those who did not. Most LGBTQ plus young people who attend school, that's 78%, reported having at least one adult at school who is supportive and affirming of their LGBTQ plus identity. And finally, for allies who want to help, here are 10 ways LGBTQ plus young people reported would make them feel more accepted. Trusting that I know who I am, standing up for me, not supporting politicians that advocate for anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, looking up things about LGBTQ plus identities on their own to better understand, respecting my pronouns, showing support for how I express my gender, asking questions about LGBTQ plus identities to better understand, accepting my partners, showing support on social media, and having or displaying pride flags. So yeah, and don't just not support anti-trans politicians. Please actively vote them out if you can. And to all of my trans, non-binary, and otherwise non-conforming viewers, I love you. I support you. Please keep being you no matter what. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.